Live
It's
from
alive.
Austin, Texas, this is the Plutopia News Network. Our guest tonight, the not ready for cable news players, Suzy Shelor, Maggie Duval, Scoop Sweeney, that's this guy right here, and tonight's barista and our bartender for our happy hour, John Lebkowsky.
Barista. I get to make all the coffee.
I'll handle the other drinkables here.
Yeah, I'll help you with that, Scoop.
Okay.
I'm actually in the process of opening this thing up, and then I will share it.
Oh,
I will share it widely.
I didn't realize it was show and tell, teach, and I didn't bring my science project. It's still in the refrigerator. It's been in there for about 6 weeks, and I started to name it, I think.
Oh, is it moving?
It's talking now. It has its own little language.
Ooh.
Everyone should clean their refrigerators, no matter that you're on quarantine and no one's coming over to visit.
Seriously, when you open it and has that weird onion smell, not that I know personally.
No, not at all.
The one combined with celery and some sort of green matter of, all those greens that you bought that you were going to be healthy and you never ate. Okay, just saying.
Well, a good guideline green is either new guacamole or old meat.
Oh. Moldy mirepoix.
That has served me well over these many decades.
New guacamole or old meat. That's got to be like a book title or an album title or something.
Or
there used
I think
to be
old meat's a good one.
There used to be a drummer here in Austin named Tiny Guacamole. Tiny Guacamole was the drummer for Ramon and the Four Daddy-O's.
Absolutely.
And he was very large.
Very.
So all the people, the crowd has rushed forward, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's people stacking up out there. Meanwhile,
yeah, what are these people on? Did John
we should have
distribute
some
the
introduction.
mushrooms again?
Scoop, introduce yourself. Let's all introduce ourselves.
Scoop Sweeney, right here, waving at you in the little screen in your face there.
All right. There's Scoop, and I'm John Lebkowsky. And should I tell you what I do for a living?
Yes.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Suzy.
I am also not doing anything at all. Actually, I have a new podcast that's coming out tomorrow. It's QI
cool.
Radio podcast, and we start at 7 tomorrow. That'll be our first one. So we got Kennedy from
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm excited about it. It'll
Are you
be
doing
fun.
it live?
Yeah, we are. We're
Fantastic.
we're gonna give it a shot and see what we can do. The queer community's got a big void in it here right now, so somebody needs to step in.
Who did you say your guest was going to be?
Our first guest is Kennedy Lofton from the Montrose Center. They have a center that is just absolutely phenomenal, and we'd like for him to talk and to us, maybe get somebody to say, hey, that's a good idea. We should have one in the Capitol, you know.
And he's going to be here too, right?
Kennedy?
Yeah.
Yes, he's coming on our show too. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, he's got so much going on with I can't wait to talk to him with you guys too, because the COVID thing is really on the top of his mind right now.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
as all of us. And Maggie.
I'm Maggie Duval, and wow, what don't I do? Why is everything ramped up when everything's shutting down? I'm not quite sure about why that's going on, but just trying to process it all. Working on, I do all sorts of things, and I'm not going to go into that right now, but worried about. I'm trying to get help my daughter get moved up to New Mexico in the middle of a pandemic. And this is supposed to happen on the 15th. And, we're going to see if we can do it or not. We've already thought through precautions and all that, but we also want to be respectful of, the many friends that we have in New Mexico are noting that places like Taos are putting up signs, and they're asking Texans to, they're being inundated with Texans who refuse to wear masks and things, and really standing their ground and figuring out, from my understanding, what they're going to do to protect their community, because they have a very small hospital, like I think 5 or 6 ICU units. So it's an interesting process. And we're ready to go, and we're also ready to not go. We're in the whole thing of like, what's going to work best for everyone, what's going to work best for the people in New Mexico, that kind of thing. It's just a weird place to be right now. So I'm juggling empty nest, a lot of work coming up, and getting my daughter safe, and all sorts of things. So those are some of the things on my mind tonight.
Well, let me offer you my travel services. I do for my friends. I've done many moves back and forth between Texas and the West Coast. Some were good, some were bad, and some are still missing in action.
Yeah.
My main advice is don't stop at any place to eat that is named Eat. Right away, that should be a big no. And any place that says it's open 24 hours, I had a great experience. I was headed back to Berkeley from Texas at one time, and we stopped in Van Horn, which is side of El Paso, and we were just starving, and so we went to find some place to eat, and this was this place that said open 24 hours. We go up and it's closed. And I asked the guy inside, he said, well, not all in a row.
That's excellent.
So avoid those places also.
Well, one of the, we tend to, even before COVID, when we road trip, and I've taken lots of road trips with my daughter since she was really young, we always have like picnics. So we take all our food with us, and we stop and we picnic and all that. And there was one time in our lives where, I would take her up to be with her dad for a while, because her dad lives in New Mexico, and she's moving to a place on his land. And where we'd stop to do the exchange, we were exchanging the goods, was your hometown of Big Spring, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Lord.
Yeah. So we'd always do the handoff, and we'd always be by the spring. So we're going to be passing through, and we'll give our regards if we can, move through.
Don't mention my name. There are still warrants out, please.
They've decked that place out recently, Maggie. They've really fixed up the spring. They've got a walkway around there. So I hear. I haven't been there yet, but apparently it's not a bad place to hang out.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. Yeah.
Isn't cannabis legal there now too?
In Big Spring.
In Big Spring?
No, in New Mexico, on your way to New Mexico.
In Big Spring at the death center.
Not in Texas. No, yeah,
I think
felony.
I may be wrong, but I think medical marijuana dispensaries are legal, because I do see there's for some reason I got on the list of, I don't know why, of a company that creates all sorts of edibles and all that. But, where we're going is really close to the border of Colorado. So, but they might not let us in either. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they might not.
The red pill or the blue pill?
It's legal in Arkansas, but there's none of the doctors will prescribe it, and there's no place, there are no dispensaries to get it. But it's legal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I was originally in California, because my wife Clarissa has MS, and so she got early on into the medical marijuana program.
It works.
But we, had a real doctor, our doctor at Kaiser Permanente. He just, sure, it's like they're a liberal nonprofit group.
Yeah.
And all these other people I knew were just like, they had to try to bribe people. But there was one doctor who, $125, you were disabled, no matter how.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
So we were standing in line to get my wife her card at the place in downtown Oakland, and we were the only oldies there. Everyone else was about 18 or 19. And
having real bad cataracts.
They all had the same blue file folder in their hand that they got from Dr. Dope. And it's like, Okay.
Yeah.
We did
yeah.
it the hard way. But we
Right.
did it the cheap way. It cost us a $5 copay.
Oh man, gosh, and that's the thing is it's starting to be covered by insurance in certain places, and they're saying you can't test you can't test for it at the workplace in certain places either.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's covering I don't think it's the NFL, but it may be the basketball league is able to smoke marijuana and not be tested. One of them is.
Oh, wow.
Some sport ball thing.
They should require them.
Sport
It
ball
would make
thing.
a lot funnier games.
Wouldn't it be funny? I'm all for the guys taking all the steroids they want and beating the crap out of each other. I mean, that's like gladiator stuff, right? But it's like, don't show me you can hit a ball over the fence. You've just taken 8,000 steroids. Of course you can. Who can't?
Yeah.
It's not really a game at that point, but I would like to see him do the football like that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about that, about people getting hurt, is that the nanny state does not want you to die. So the nanny state keeps trying to keep you from dying, or keep you from being hurt, or keep you from catching COVID-19. And obviously,
You've been hanging
it
out
would be great if everybody caught COVID-19.
Herd immunity, right?
Exactly.
Or is it the herd over the buffalo herd over the cliff? Which one are we?
That's the one I'm looking at.
That would be lemmings. That would be lemmings.
Sorry. I was remembering didn't that how they killed the buffaloes, the Indians?
Yeah, my Uncle Bob had this place out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, west of Pahrump, where Art Bell used to do his broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
And we visited back in 1978, and it's like north of Death Valley. And he was pointing out this cliff where there's all these bones that they found where they used to drive the herds over. That's how you killed them when you didn't have, high-powered AR-15s and stuff. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The real killing happened when these light complected dudes showed up with their big long rifles and were hunting to give all the folks back east all these fine hats and coats and rugs and whatever. And that pretty much put an end to the buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And the indigenous people.
Yep. That was kind of the cash crop for the indigenous people, and it went away.
Yeah, it sure did. They're being really ravaged by COVID right now. The folks on the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
Reservations, more than one, obviously.
Definitely Navajo. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of an odd thing trying to figure out how this thing spreads, because apparently, from what I've been reading recently, it's not necessarily going to spread by individual exposure here and there, but it's spread by super spreaders.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people who are apparently highly contagious. And it may be that they're at a particular point in their illness where they're shedding more viruses than they would be at other stages. Or it could be that they just happen to shed like crazy as compared to other people who have it. But there are people who are exposed to the virus and don't get sick. Don't get sick, not just don't get symptoms.
Yeah.
And there are also situations that people are in where they're around a lot of other people, but either there's not a super spreader present, or maybe it's that they're outdoors and it doesn't really spread as well outdoors because it gets blown around. So the latest theory is that COVID is transmitted most readily indoors when there's a lot of people close together and there's a super spreader present.
Mm-hmm.
And it's chilly. The temperature has something to do with it too.
Yeah, I've heard that too. So, and this
like
is
air conditioning chili, right?
Yeah, because
like Texas air conditioning chili.
Exactly, because it keeps those droplets in the air longer.
Well, the thing that concerns me are the people that don't have any symptoms, because I remember studying about typhoid Mary.
Mm-hmm.
The notorious spreader of typhoid back in the day. And I can avoid, the people that are obviously sniffling and coughing and looking like crap, but the young, handsome, healthy person that's standing real close to you in line could just as easily be the next typhoid Mary type.
Well, which brings us to the subject of masks. And the reason that we are asked to wear masks is because we may be sick and not know it. And if we're sick and not know it, we may be shedding viruses and not know it.
I heard
if we're wearing a mask, we're less likely to infect other people than if we aren't wearing one. So if more people wear masks, that will impact the spread of the virus.
Yeah, I told John and our guest Gary Gach on our most recent podcast about my encounter with a mask denier here in beautiful Elgin, which is the closest civilization to my area. And I went into town, and this guy, just out of nowhere, accuses me of being a socialist or a communist, or why are you wearing that thing? And I'm like, what? Yeah, he thought I was Joseph Stalin in drag or something.
Well, I mean, do they not want their surgeons to wear a mask? Do they not understand how this works?
Well, they don't understand a whole heck of a lot. Elgin is the home to the infamous bar where the guys put up a sign that said, you can't wear a mask in the bar, wear a mask, no service. And the guy was sick. Of course, it's a real hotbed. It's the Liberty Tree Bar. That's a little giveaway there during the height of or depth of the Tea Party thing. That was a big gathering spot for all the Tea Partiers that didn't want to have any tea.
There was a place like that in Belleville, Texas, where my family lives. And they, as soon as Trump won, they renamed this cafe. It was an immigrant family, renamed their cafe Trump Cafe. It has since closed, but it was it was the biggest restaurant in Belleville, and PBS did an expose on it. It was just the Trump Cafe, and then they have a Snowflake Donuts right next to it.
Wow.
Snowflake Donuts.
I have a theory I'm trying to tease out. It's not fully formed, but I'm just observing things. And, I keep thinking about all the Karen memes and all the Karen incidences and the people who won't wear masks and blah, blah. And what keeps coming up for me is people who feel, I'm getting the sense that these people feel completely and utterly powerless. Karens and the people who are like, you will not infringe on my rights. Like,
right.
You will see me. You will listen to me. I have some power. I have some kind of agency over my life. I'm really interested in the deeper. I don't want to like make anybody bad or wrong or anything, but it's like this kind of pathology. Because I'm remembering in my own family, it was always a nightmare to go. My dad, before he died, was like watching Fox News 24/7 on like 20 TVs in his house, had the gun arsenal and all this stuff. It was really freaking sad. Had no friends. He'd pay people to come take care of him, right? So like no connection with people. And, the words my brother told me, he said, right before he died, like his last words were like, I was a failure. And that always stuck with me. And I keep thinking about these people, so I would go, when I was a kid, we go out to restaurants, and his mother was the same way. They'd always find fault with something. They'd always make a big stink, like a hair was in the food, or it was cold or whatever. And we had to bring all this attention to them, just to they had to make a big deal, like, I will be respected, I will be seen, I will be, So there's something in there for me with all these incidences we see of, daily with the Karens and stuff like that. and I love the name Karen, by the way. And my dear friend passed away, who's named Karen this year. So it's not the word, it's not the name, it's the behavior.
Right.
But these people that feel the need to, like, please God, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. Like, it seems to be with the same kind of people. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
Well, you know what, what their problem
about?
is. Yeah, I mean, their problem is that they think that they exist.
Are you going Buddhist on here? Yeah.
Where else could I go?
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think, you know, you just, you dig into how you feel, and then it's almost like you don't have the space to say, you know what, I was wrong, because you're just getting pelted over and over, and you finally stand up and say, listen, damn it. You know, I think that's how they feel. They have been getting pelted over and over by the rest of us on TV. You know, they have been. Their president has been able to say that they're good people, but the rest of us are saying, no, you're not. And we're shaming them at restaurants. And you remember all of that kind of stuff. I think that they are trying to say, wait a minute, you know, our president said we were going to have our chance to speak, and he hasn't given it to him. So
got to put the blame somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. They're mad.
Yeah, it's just a deep something. And I feel like it's something that's like deeply systemic, which, and I will bring up racism here, the white supremacy. It's like always, like, in some ways I think about, I was promised that I was at the top of the ladder. And when Trump came into power, I was part of that 1% somehow. I wasn't like all these other people below me. You know, like, you can't come up the ladder, I'm going to kick you down. There's just some feeling of like, it's about weakness and powerless. Not weak. I'm not saying, you know, oh, you're weak. But there's a feeling of weakness maybe they have. I don't know. That, like I said, I'm trying to tease this out. There's something here.
Do you think it's an age thing? Or are you noticing it across the board?
I'm noticing it mostly, generally, age. And, you know, it's the same reason why I've had a hard time dating in my age group, because it tends to be angry, middle-aged white men and white women. And I'm middle-aged, but I'm not angry in that way. But there's just this sort of like bitterness, and I haven't gotten mine. And maybe I invested in what you're supposed to do. I invested in the rules, how you're supposed to do things, and I've been completely fucked over by the system. And there's these other people coming up now who are trying to take away from me. Like, it feels like this cluster or whatever of,
it's not pie. It's, you know, it's not pie. It's equal slices, but there is a fear that that equality somehow is making you less, when instead it's bringing someone up to your level, not taking away anything from you.
Exactly.
That's definitely the feeling I'm getting as well from almost everyone on the right.
Let me kick in for the older generation, card-carrying member right here. Another one that I spot, but I won't out him on that. The whole thing of the conservative, grumpy, screaming and yelling at everybody, old guys, you know, it's a meme of itself. But I experienced that with my father when I was, you know, in my most radical days, working at Pacifica Radio and writing for the Underground Press. And he was pretty pissed off at me. He was a Nixon Republican. He had, I mean, he donated all sorts of money to the Republican Party in Texas and elsewhere. I'd come home for holidays, and I'd have to see the autograph picture of Richard Nixon and Pat on the mantelpiece. And right next to that, from the Bushes, because he knew George Bush from business in West Texas. So, you know, we just finally, you know, reached a detente, if you will, and agreed to just not talk politics. And as he aged and I aged, something strange happened. You know, he didn't have to work for a living anymore. He retired, and he got to do things that he wanted to do. And one day I got a call. I was headed to do a concert in the Sierras, a really big show. And they told me my dad was ill. So I just canceled everything and went and flew out there. And he had liver cancer. He called all the family and said, I just want to spend some time with you. And we thought, well, I mean, how soon? He said, it's going to be a while, but I don't want you to see me then. I want you to see me now. And spent a wonderful couple of weeks, getting to know my father all over again. And he had mellowed, and he didn't care what it was that I was doing. He cared that I was doing what I wanted. And
wow,
boy, those words, changed my life.
Man, yeah.
And, before we left, he just said, don't come see me, because I want to have you remember me as this guy and not the guy that's groaning and moaning on the bed. Liver cancer is not pretty. So
what a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift, and I'm hoping I'm somewhat of that guy. I try not to scream and yell at anyone unless they do it first.
You certainly don't strike me that way at all. We're kindred spirits, Scoop. And I mean, I'm reminded of, I was disowned for so many years, reowned for a couple of years after my mother died, and then disowned again at the end of my father's life, I think because of dementia. But I did have an amazing experience that's kind of similar to that. I was invited to attend the inaugural ball with the National Women's Political Caucus at Obama's first inauguration.
Brilliant.
And here's my dad, who was like, Republican, all this stuff. And I just said, hey, Dad, I've been invited to go to an inaugural ball at the Corcoran Art Gallery. And he was so impressed by that. I knew he was. He didn't say it. But I just came to visit him. He'd always scared the crap out of me my entire life. But we he was gentle, he was broken, but he was open. And we spent a couple of beautiful days together, and just he talked to me at a peer level, which I'd never experienced before, which was amazing. And, he had this huge video library, and he was just going through them over and over again, A to Z, right? Old musicals. This is kind of the, Greatest Generation kind of thing, old musicals. But he said, okay, we've hit on S tonight. And the movie we watched together was Schindler's List.
Oh God.
Right.
But it was a profound experience because, as we were watching, you remember the girl in the red coat?
Of course.
I realized that my whole father's life had been protecting the girl in the red coat. He just didn't know how to express it or something. So I had a lot of compassion there. So, when he passed and we found all the guns and the ammo and the conspiracy theory stuff, I just felt such compassion for him, that he lived in so much fear.
Yeah. When
he could have had so much connection. That kind of, does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. It does.
Yeah. That confirms.
You've heard the saying, too soon old, too late smart. And you mentioned your dad saying that at the end, he said that he felt he'd been a failure. And I think that unfortunately, too many people don't really realize who they are until they're so far along that they don't have much time left to be just that, and it's a very sad thing. And I think that for most of us, what our project should be is peeling away all the crap that's not really us.
Absolutely.
And leaving what really is.
That confirms my new motto, which is, it's never too late to not be an asshole. I'm going to have the t-shirt printed, I think.
I'll wear it.
I'll wear it too.
I'll wear it.
And the Trump version would be, it's never too late to be an asshole.
Absolutely.
You're never too old.
I took another pot shot at Trump. I've got to quit doing that. That's
okay. You know what? We are all on edge, I think. And if it comes out and makes you feel better for a second, I say, do it.
It's like a cosmic colonic or something. It's just you know. Well, I just want to. I've been talking too much in this session, but I just wanted to say one thing because I was coming into. I think we were all going to take some time to talk about COVID and how it's all affected us and all that. And just one last thing I wanted to say. That's to your point, John. What have I been doing? I've been stepping back, and I'm realizing that I'm going into this moment in time, in linear time, and whatever time, where for the first time in my life, I don't have to take care of anyone. Ever since I was a child, I had to take care of somebody in my family, whether it was, my parents' marriage falling apart and having to kind of be, we've all been through some aspect of that, I'm pretty sure, and then when my brother was dying, when I was 14 and, and then being married and then married again. And then, all of it's, I'm not complaining about it. It's just like, I've always had to take care of people. And for the first time in my life, I feel like, oh my God, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Excuse my French. Oh, is that going to be censored out?
No,
not on this show.
We can say whatever we
We'll
want.
probably highlight it and put stars.
It's going to be a search engine.
It's just really exciting to me. Like it's dawning on me. My body feels like it's changing in a way. It's like,
that's great.
I can
like lighter.
I can. I've always my heart's desire is to be a writer. I've always encouraged John with this. Like, John, damn it, write your book, write your many books, right? I'm ready to write my books, and all of a sudden I'm excavating all this, this writing I wrote like 10 years ago, and I'm talking about myself now, and blah blah, and I'm working on setting myself up to just like, hey, I might die tomorrow. I'm not scared of death. I'm scared of the pain.
Yeah, I just don't want it to hurt or be tortured
totally.
Or anything. Let's do it.
But like
Maggie,
now, I can. Go ahead.
You're in a great spot. Just don't make the mistake some of my friends have, that when they got the empty nest, don't forget to take care of yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm going like, bye everybody. Like, I'm working on. It's just really exciting to me. It's a totally different mindset of, I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about, I never, you know what I mean? It's just like,
it's a whole new chapter.
Yeah.
It might be a whole new book. Hell, you don't know.
Yeah.
This, and this COVID thing, I think everybody has the opportunity to do a little self-introspection right now, but there are a lot of people who aren't. Those are those people who are screaming the white supremacist stuff, all over the place. And I think self-introspection is something that people just I don't think they do normally. A lot of people don't even read. And now we've got this opportunity, and it breaks my heart that people aren't taking this time where you're not expected to do this, that, and the other like you are every day. You have this free time. It's not boredom. Do something with it.
Well, the sad thing is that they don't have any idea who or what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And,
well, if I could interject, we wanted to talk about COVID-19, and I read something today from our friend Jack McFadden, who was our recent guest on the show. And he said something then that if there was one great thing that could happen from the shutdown on 6th Street is that a lot of those shot bars would go away.
Yeah.
And he repeated that today on a Twitter. He tweeted that most of the people behind the bar close protest are the very same folks running those shot bars.
Yeah.
Very shot bars that are filled to overflowing with wildly gyrating and drunken people who have no idea what they're doing and no mask.
Have you seen their signs, their protest signs?
Oh,
all bars matter. What's
Bar
that?
lives matter.
Bar lives matter. Yeah.
It's
so tacky.
It's precious.
Oh,
Just
aren't
precious.
they're so cute.
Yeah.
But I thought that was an interesting thing, because in the entertainment business, the whole idea of having that kind of atmosphere is just poisonous. When I came out here from California, I'd worked a lot of clubs out. Yeah. And there were some real losers, but mostly I found that people out there, the ones that did music, and I toured my bands through all these clubs, and it never got that crazy because the music people really didn't want that to be a kind of behavior to be associated with what they're trying to do.
You want to be listened to. Yeah.
Sure, the metalheads would do it, and some of the punkers would do it. Even the punks really didn't want to have their name tied into, someone burning the place down or trashing the place or getting in fights. But I didn't, the times I've been on 6th Street, I saw no attempt to control anything.
It's depressing.
Except at the club, like the Parish, and Continental Club and those places. That's the real, music industry in Austin. And I just can't imagine having to bring a musical act into the shot bars.
6th Street is just gross. I've been to a lot of shows on 6th Street too, but like the Boathouse, Steamboat, can't remember which one it was, but there are some and they do a big turnover. I notice as well. You got the same people working at all different bars, and I guess it smells like Bourbon Street down there. It reminds me of New Orleans. It just smells like vomit and frat boys.
Well,
and that is
wasn't that a Nirvana song? Oh wait, no.
I spent a lot of time in New Orleans, but it didn't so much smell like Bourbon Street. There's a sewage plant.
Yeah.
Downstream there. That was more the smell I was getting.
Well, and it's also from a very, very, going kind of like woo-woo here a little bit, but I'm hyper empathic. So I haven't been down there in years, but I had to go right before COVID hit for something at the Alamo Ritz. And I was just felt sick to my stomach because I could feel it's just like this psychic stink kind of thing. And it's just, whereas you go to some place like the Continental Club, which is all about so much community, the music community, the community in general, it has this vibration that's beautiful. There's interconnection. People are taking care of each other. And so wiping some of that stuff out, please God, I
would like it if South Congress could be preserved. I see it being just dismantled right before my eyes, and I wish that maybe this thing would stop at least that.
Yeah, but that's a good segue into what do you all think? I mean, I'm thinking of making my move to leave. Well, actually, am making my move to leave Austin after 15 years. But what do you think? It feels like that. I remember Brian Swim, the cosmologist, talking about raisin bread as it's rising in the oven. Like when you used to have this concentration of the raisins, right? The community, the connect, the Austin vibe, and it's still there, but the bread's rising. And it's getting diluted. What do all three of you think is gonna happen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, talking about the original Austin community, a lot of those people they're out living in this neighborhood or that, and there's an email list for people who are in various neighborhood associations. It's called the Austin Neighborhood Council email list, ANC. And a lot of those people are just kind of complaining because things are changing and they don't like it. And I get that. I mean, I've lived in Austin for a long time. I first moved here in 1969, and I had visited here before that. And recently, from time to time, I've had recurring memories of the time that are multidimensional memories where I'm remembering not just intellectually something that happened, but I'll kind of feel a feeling and smell a smell from back then, and I'll remember how, when I first started coming to Austin, it was raining a lot, and I thought it was like a rainforest or something. I associated Austin as being, I thought of it as being a place where it rains all the time.
Wow.
And of course, we've
It
seen
did.
periods of time when it didn't, but it did then, yeah. And I've had so many adventures here, and I've gone through so much stuff. And, sometimes you feel like you should have been part of the bigger things, but really there's a lot of magic in being part of the smaller things, or the things that were happening kind of in the sidelines, and just kind of being around for an evolution like that, and seeing a city go through so many remarkable changes, and feeling the magic of the city. And that was one of the things about Austin. When I first moved to Austin, there was really a magic here. I mean, it had a very special feeling. And that's not completely gone, but it's a bit buried under a lot of stuff. There's a lot of noise in the air, and there's a lot of layers of things that have been piled on that, so that you don't necessarily always have a good perception of it.
Yeah, it's called civilization.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
It's a bit of a virus. I remember coming down, when I was a student at North Texas, there was nothing going on in Denton. I County. I had all these friends down in Austin, so I would jump on to the highway and head down to Austin. My friend Jenny was working at KLBJ. And
wow.
We'd exchange radio stories and go down to the Jade Club, and just see all these great bands that weren't famous, but they were really good, and all the people were having fun. And yeah, I remember that stuff. But that stuff never lasts forever. I experienced the same thing in Berkeley when I moved to Berkeley. It was it was no longer the summer of love, but it was really a great place to be. There were so many wonderful things you could do. You could go see any kind of music, any time of day or night. But that went away because.
Yeah, and I've been watching documentaries about Laurel Canyon, and it was a special place too. And you can just kind of feel the vibe coming off of those documentaries,
But, I'm sure people, the younger generations now, are getting their own vibe.
Well, they think it's great. They think it's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's exactly the way the generation before me thought about us. Like, well, what are those idiots doing? Their long hair and their funny cigarettes.
I think it's more, I think it's more, this is really great talking about this, because I think it's more about, or less about, trying to preserve this thing in time, but more about what was it that was so brilliant and wonderful and just exhilarating, about those times. Because my experience too, like I remember like being part of the Littleton Town Hall music scene in the 80s in Denver. And then I was out in California, and, I was there with the Gilman Street Club and, like Rancid and Green Day and all this stuff, and then Burning Man and the Web blowing up there, and and then here, and then Santa Fe, and I've been all over the place. And that's the thing. What's the thread that goes through all of them? There's a sense of I think it was kind of a maker vibe. Like we were making something together. We were creating something together. It was like co-creative energy, which like gets me like really all frisky, right? And that's the constant between all of them, these different scenes, because I could have stayed in Berkeley, I could have stayed in Santa Fe, I could have stayed in Denver, and I could have stayed here. It's just anyway, what do you think about that?
I think the real magic tends to come from the earth, though, and that in scenes where you really feel it, you're somehow connecting with the earth. And I think if we've lost some of that to some extent, it's because too many people are often behind walls staring into screens, too much of the time, and that they become somewhat detached from that aspect of it. I mean, in the Austin I knew of, like the late 60s, early 70s, people were outdoors a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Sitting on porches, playing music at night.
We didn't have TV. I mean, we had
Mhm.
3 stations. You
Yeah.
know, there was, it was a whole, our dogs didn't have flea medication either. I mean, it was a whole different world back then, you know.
Well,
The
pets never got sick back then.
No,
Yeah.
but
Now they get all kinds of exotic illnesses. But
it's
back then, I don't
true.
remember my
Yeah.
pets ever being sick.
Oh,
Yeah.
vets are really inventive at coming up with interesting conditions.
Yeah.
But you know, the whole thing of you know, remembering the good old days, it's great, and I do it. But I've learned that it's really important to don't lose track of now. You know,
Mhm.
the whole thing of be here now is
Mhm.
you know, it's kind of central to the way I exist, because if you're off in the past somewhere in your mind and you're not paying attention to what's going on around you at this moment, then you're missing out on.
Can't see the beauty right now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
And
kind of, I think what we're talking about is just that. I mean,
mhm.
it was what the present was at that time. And the question is whether we're missing the magic of the current moment because we're somehow detached from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you, John, about the earth, the contact with the earth. I told you and Gary Gok about my experience with my grandmother. She was raised in the Choctaw Nation in Indian Territory before it became Oklahoma, and she was educated at what they called the Indian Girls School.
Mhm.
And she was just this wonderful person that I grew up with. I'd go to visit in the summer, and she taught me the Choctaw way of dealing with life. And it wasn't any wild thing of going out and kill the white man and shoot bows and arrows and scalping. It was about the earth. She had a wonderful garden, and her husband, my grandfather, died, horribly, actually, because they didn't have a lot of painkillers. He died at home, and we were all there. And after experiencing that, I went out with her into her garden, and I asked, are you afraid of dying? She said, no, I'm just wondering who's going to care for my garden.
Wow.
And that was the Choctaw way of, it's like death is just part of what we do. And, but it's nice to be able to take care of your garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's amazing, Scoop. I'm learning all these things about you. This is
I like
awesome.
that story.
Well, I'll give you this thing. All these years, all of my family, brother, sisters, mother, all aunts and uncles are all registered as members of the Choctaw Nation.
Wow.
But I never have. But I've started the application process because I was being a political bonehead. I just thought it was wrong that you had to get a piece of paper to prove that you're Choctaw. I knew I was Choctaw. I grew up around them. My mom and her mom talked in Choctaw. They had the Lord's Prayer embroidered on a big thing in the kitchen in Choctaw. It was a written language. They were educated people. But I finally decided, after reading I have my grandfather's scrapbook. He was a prairie preacher. He preached to the Choctaw and the Cherokee nations on horseback.
Wow.
And he ended up being in the first Indian Territory legislature and was elected to represent the Durant, Oklahoma, which was the Choctaw Nation. That's the capital. In the first Oklahoma legislature, but he died before he took office. But I have all of his writings. He wrote.
Man,
that's very cool.
Some of it is religious. He was a Baptist preacher, but he was a Baptist Choctaw preacher. So it was a whole different experience.
Yeah, that I'm trying to make that.
we have to work on your book, Scoop.
The Choctaw believed in a creator, an earth creator, but it was more earth centric, not lightning bolts and
Yeah.
falling from the sky.
Was it a Christian belief? Did they believe? I mean, did they follow the Christian?
A lot of Chaco became Christian. It just
especially after the Indian schools.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
my friends had said, you're not Indian, because look at you. You don't look like Tonto. It's like, look at the chief. On our website, the chief looks just like me.
You know what I'm
Dude, there are no purebloods. I mean, no
you know
matter
what I'm
Rudolph Hitler tells you, there's no pure blood out there, and that's just the way it is.
What I'm reminded of hearing your story, Scoop, is it's what I've come to learn about. I've been in Texas for 15 years now, and I've always been somebody who, it's very important to me that I've developed, because I've lived everywhere, that I develop a sense of place. So I sink into, the history, the geology, the anthropology, everything. I'm fascinated by it. I want to know where I'm planted. I want to respect where I'm planted and know more about it. What your story reminds me of is so many Texans that I've met since I've been here that reveal these aspects of themselves that, have just been sort of like there, but never revealed. Now we're like uncovering them. And what it reminds me of is, are y'all familiar with the Sephardic Jews in New Mexico? So when Ferdinand and Isabella reconquested Spain from the Moors, the Jews were forced to either convert to Catholicism or they'd be slaughtered, basically, right? So there were all these conversos that converted to the Catholicism, but they would, practice their faith in private. Well, a lot of them volunteered to come over to the New World. And so all throughout New Mexico, you see symbols of Judaism, like hidden, kind of like intertwined with all the petroglyphs and the Catholicism and stuff. And you'll see evidence of, they would go out and celebrate Sabbath, Shabbat, out in the fields by themselves. But now in the last about 20 years, it's really started to flower. People are embracing like this is who we are. It's not just this white or this or Texan or New Mexican. We're a combination of all these amazing things. And I think that's one of the things that excites me about everything that's going on now, is just we're fluffing this all up. We're seeing our shadow, we're dealing with everything, but also we're seeing all this beauty of this interconnection that we're, we couldn't say anything before, or we didn't think it was worthwhile speaking about, or whatever. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Scoop.
Yeah, that's a good story. I feel like this is our metaphorical great flood. It's just 40 days and 40 nights. I mean, they didn't really count right back then anyway. Methuselah was how old? 5,000 years old.
900
yeah. So I don't really know, but I do feel like if this were told, 6,000 years from now, it may be, looked at as metaphorically as a flood that just, washed out a great, I mean, my God, there are porpoises and dolphins in the Venice canals. Come on. We needed this break. The earth is shaking itself free from the fleas, I think, That's how I feel about it.
And we're the fleas.
Exactly. We're the parasites.
Yeah.
Well, if you think that the archaeologists are going to find us in 6,000 years, I've got to clear my browser history.
That's not good.
Man.
So I just want to say too that I appreciate that John is continuing to change his background.
Yeah. It's good. I like it. It goes with the stories.
One of the most fun things I do on these things.
Yeah.
Play with the background.
That's
the cover of Ram Dass's book.
Yes.
Be Here Now.
My mom gave me that book that she bought when it came out when I was like 13 years old.
Yeah, I just unearthed one of my old books from that period, and that just totally confused me when I got it. It's called On Having No Head, and it was a Zen Buddhist analysis on the realization that this person has no head, and he was proving it. And it's a very interesting read.
We need to have a Plutopia book club thing.
Oh man, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be so fun.
Well, we will do that. That's
I'm down for
definitely
that.
a great project.
Yay.
This guy is one of several figurines that my dad brought back from Japan.
Wow.
He was in the Army of Occupation. And when I look at these old guys, I think about how things just change, but they don't really. Because these guys, they're, you know, I mean, this guy looks a little bit like me in a way, you know. If I could just have a hat like that, he's got a great hat, you know.
But we can find you one.
Looks a little ZZ Topish.
ZZ Topish.
So Suzy, I think that one of these broadcasts, you and I have to have white beard Van Dyke things like John.
Oh my God, that would be
Scoop.
great.
Yeah,
I could do that. I could do that.
We're gonna join you.
We can Colonel Sanders that up, no problem.
Now I'm taking notes furiously on this one. I can't wait.
We have 5 minutes left.
So
That's all. I mean, this is the end. I mean,
John,
do I need a will?
I want to hear John's pithy thought for the evening. What are you thinking about, John?
Well, I'll try to make it quick enough, but I was actually, the thing I was been sort of screwing around with is politics. And the prevailing discussions are about, Trump versus Biden, Republicans versus Democrats or whatever. And I think the political spectrum is misrepresented in many of the discussions about it, or, you know, within media. And I'm staring over at another screen here where I have a list I was working on. I was thinking that there's really 4 political tribes in the US right now. And, you know, left to right, you've got the left, progressive, new left, democratic socialists, Bernie Sanders people, Elizabeth Warren people, AOC. And, you know, they're reading Mother Jones and The Intercept and things like that. And then you have the traditional conservatives who used to be Republicans, but now their party's been hijacked, so they can't be Republicans anymore. And those are, actually, I'm not going from left to right. I'm going from left to right to left to right. But the traditional conservatives, their guys would be people like Mitt Romney and Jeb Bush and the guys in the Lincoln Project who are pretty interesting.
Love those guys.
Yeah, those guys are great. And, you know, they're reading like The Economist or National Review, which is, I mean, but this is like a form of conservative that really was conservative. I mean, and they were also rational, and you could work with them, you know, and they could work with the other guys, which are the traditional liberals. And that would be like Joe Biden, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, and they're reading the New Republic, or they're watching MSNBC or reading Salon. And they're like what Democrats always were, you know, and now they're under fire from those guys who are the farther left people, the progressives. And there should be room in the world for both, but, you know, they need to work that out. But they have major differences. And that's another thing, you know, kind of be watching out for. And then there's the Trumpists. We used to call it the John Birch Society, the Birchers. And now they're the Trumpists. And they somehow hijacked the Republican Party and got a guy elected president who has no real, you know, I mean, incompetence tends to run through this quite a bit. So Donald Trump is one of those guys. Q, whoever he is, maybe he is Donald Trump. A lot of people think he is. And Mitch McConnell, you know, has kind of gone there. He might have been with the traditional conservatives at one time.
Lindsey Graham,
definitely on this way. And these guys are watching Fox News and reading Breitbart, and they may be paying attention to InfoWars, and actually taking it seriously, which is weird.
And OAN.
Yeah, OAN for sure. I should have thought about that. But there's like 4 tribes here, and then there's also the libertarians, who are kind of their own weird thing, and a lot of those people have been aligning with Trumpists. Oddly enough, they probably shouldn't, because this is going to go against the grain for them. Sooner or later, they're going to realize it, right? And I'm just thinking about how this is really more complicated than just Trump versus Biden.
And I also think there's a big mass of people who find it difficult to align with any of those, who are like, what do we do? And and I'm not talking about people like who don't care, they won't vote or whatever because it lowers their vibration. But in my conversations, there's people that like, kind of like you were talking about the old guard Republicans that were like fiscally conservative, but socially libertarian or whatever. It's like, hey, government shouldn't be in anything. So blah, blah, blah. That's the family I grew up in. But I think there's this mass of people that are going like, I want to do something and I don't know what to do. And I have some of these beliefs over here that align with this, and over here with this, and up here, like, where do I put this? What do we do with that?
You're getting right to my point, which is somebody like me, I don't align with any of these tribes.
Exactly.
And I just want to do, look at what's happening and do what's right to address what's happening. All of these guys are filtering through some kind of ideological lens that is foggy, I mean, none of them are seeing clearly what's right in front of them. And even the sanest of these people are a little bit crazy, I guess.
Exactly. And
then, like, a lot of people identify as independents, and it's because they can't get on board with any of this bullshit. And I don't know where those people go, really. I mean, they tend to like kind of blow around. And right now, I think a lot of those people are going to align with Biden just because they can see what Trump is going to do. But
okay with me.
Once Biden is elected, then they might not be as much on board. I probably align. Oddly enough, I'm probably closer to the traditional conservatives than to any of the rest of them. Those Lincoln Project guys, I listen to them and they make a lot of sense,
Well, I think
I don't consider myself to be a conservative or a liberal or any of these other things.
I don't either. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. And I think this could be a good segue into our close for the evening, setting up. I think we should have our next episode talking about like, why don't we like set up, like, what would it look like if, for lack of a better term, a new party arose that was more inclusive, incorporating, something. Let's just play with it. That would be fun to brainstorm.
Yeah, the party for everybody else.
Yeah.
The Festivus party.
Yeah. The Festivus. Rest of us or Festivus?
Festivus.
Festivus for the rest of us. But we are truly out of time.
All right. Thank y'all. It's so fun always.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a blast.
Yeah, more of this. I learned so much tonight. Thank you all.
Yes.
Okay, and thanks for everybody.
We're going out
Facebook.
going out on John's favorite musician.
Oh, is that Georgi Jorgensen? I think I know that.
Off we go.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You can stay in touch with Plutopia at plutopia.io. On Facebook, look for @Plutopia News. On Twitter, it's @Plutopia. This is the Plutopia News Network, 20 minutes into the future.